Excellent. Okay, so today then, well, that's my services. I thought that rather than talk through everything, the last time I talked about the neurodiversity assessments, and so this week I've just picked another piece of my services to talk through as well, so I can highlight each one. Funnily enough, if you follow the thread, next time I'll do something different, so it goes through the list in that way. So today I'm specifically going to be talking about leadership development, but that also ties into the coaching and development as well, because well, leadership, it can be the actual development of that can be delivered in quite a few ways. It can be either the classroom based, where you've got lots of people together. It can be individual one-to-one coaching, or it can be group coaching as well in that way. What I tend to find is that the coaching method of delivery is more effective than the sort of open courses, the 5 days where people go to from different companies. Whilst that can be good for networking, to actually understand what the leaders are specifically dealing with in their organization, and having that one-to-one coaching and following that up each week allows them to have that behavioral change, and it's more effective and more realistic in their working environment. So, I prefer the coaching method for specific leadership development. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so leadership development, that's what we're looking at today. Yeah, good luck with that one. So, as you probably know, there's been lots of different models of leadership, and this is just an example that I've thrown these up there. So it's been studied for a long time. From the great man theory. So it was all about the great man. If we go back to the First World War, and there, one person, it was all down to them. It was nothing to do with the team or anything there. We've got the trait theories, the behavioral theories. So is it the way that somebody acts and behaves in their way? Situational leadership, the situation dictates what that type of leadership. And then we've got the the transformational and transactional, so the visionary transformational leaders that bring people along, which sounds all nice and glossy on the outside, but what about when that person doesn't have the right values and ethics that's underneath, when they're actually drawing people in the wrong direction in that way? And we can look back over history about people that have been transformational, but they haven't been ethically sound. They don't have good values, and they can push people in the wrong direction, so to hoodwink them in that way. So there's good and bad in all sorts of leadership. The transactional, which funnily enough, is pointed to the military quite a lot. It's not actually quite like that, I can tell you from experience, but everyone thinks, I say you do, so there's a transaction there. Transactional could also be someone goes to work, they get paid for that. So this is your job, you do it, I will give you money. That's a transaction, as simple as that. It's not quite as bad as what people think, but there's always a middle ground. So there's different ways of leading. There's not one good way of leading. There are situations, so everything dictates different styles of leadership. So it's something that's been interesting for academics for a long time. So something that I've come across, I would say fairly recently, is the Bani model of leadership that we've got on the right hand side there. The one on the left hand side is the VUCA model, and again, this is something that is really relative in today's world. So VUCA, that's an acronym for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I don't think anyone can argue that at the moment the working environment or the world and all these factors, it is very volatile, it's very uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. Moving on from the VUCA model, the Bani is something that's developed out of the VUCA model, and that describes the working environment or the world of work as brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. So again, we can't really argue that that is where we are with the world as it is at the moment. So that's how the workforce is. So therefore, that dictates that there needs to be different styles of leadership adopted so that we can overcome these issues. And as a result of that, we need to think a little bit more about what qualities leaders need to have. Now, there's been studies on chief executive officers, and quite a lot of chief execs are very good when it comes to finances, plans, and things that are very sort of tangible in an organization. So very efficient in what they do in that side, but not quite so good with the empathy, the communication, and the engaging with what is sometimes known as the softer skills, i.e. the people, because people are different. The most common thing, or the one thing that we all have in common, is that we're all different. And that is the difficult part of that. So that's something that we don't always get from the leaders. So they can be very robust in that way. So there's the call now to actually be completely more empathetic towards the individuals in the organization, so that we can lead in a BANI world or a VUCA world with everything, the volatility that's happening there. So if we have a brittle organization, which is something that could break quite easy, we have to have resilience because we don't know what direction it's going in. For the anxious, if people are uncertain about what's going to happen in the future or anything, then empathy and also mindfulness as well, being aware of the situations and what's actually happening. So if something is non-linear and we don't know what direction it's going in that way, then adaptability and also the transparency and intuition. So being completely honest with people, you know, the incomprehensible, if they don't understand the world it's in, is being honest with the people in the workforce. The other thing that we could add into there is having good decision-making styles as well, and being able to make good decisions based on good quality sound values and taking everything into account, rather than dithering around and not making a decision at all. So I'm just going to quickly go over, you know, an approach that I would probably use towards leadership, and that's having a psychometric approach. So I'm registered with the RQTU, which is the qualified test users with the British Psychological Society, and I've got numerous accreditations for different psychometric tests. So one size doesn't fit all, and if somebody wanted to use a particular test, if they wanted a particular outcome, then I would go away, I would research the specific test to actually capture that outcome. So the benefits of this then are, you know, you can hold a mirror up to someone. So if I was coaching an executive, it would give an opportunity to give them something where they could understand what might or might not be going right for them. Now, it's not you know, a complete character assassination. It's just looking at the balance of what they've got. They will have lots of good qualities of the strengths there, but they may have areas that might inhibit them in being the best that they can be. So that's what we'll be looking at there. So it's important that they have the self-awareness and that they're open and have a growth mindset and want to do that. So if they don't want to engage in it, then there's no point holding up the mirror, because they'll see a unicorn, even though they're a rhino. It's also a great start point for a conversation as well. So it's something tangible. And I would emphasize that really, that whatever psychometrics are, they are only a start point for conversation. It's not a done dusted deal that this report drops in front of someone. They say, there you go. You're highly diligent. It says so on the report, so you must be. There's a conversation that goes after that, and we have the feedback. And I'll come on to that a little bit later on. So we've also got the tangible basis for action planning. So we've got something that people can actually see. We can look at that, they accept that, and then we can develop their action plan as we go on.
1 minute
and also, okay, and also a measure of development as well. So the things that we need to be aware of is, as I've said before, one size does not fit all. The ethical considerations as well. Is it right to use the psychometric or not? So if we're doing some recruiting, are we trying to clone the workforce, or are we looking for individual differences? If the answer is cloning, then I would say that we need to step away from that. Credibility of tests. Well, we need to make sure that the test is credible and there's underpinning research that's gone into it. And also the feedback following the assessment is absolutely vitally important. Now, Myers-Briggs, which probably most people have heard about, there has been some mishaps afterwards, which unfortunately has led to suicide of people because they weren't given the correct feedback after taking the psychometric test. So they take the label and think, yes, that's me, but it's not fed back in the right way. So we have to be aware of that. I'm going to skip forward a little bit now and just talk a bit about resilience. So this is one of the tools that I would particularly use for resilience, a psychometric.
10 minutes.
What this actually shows, and I'll be 30 seconds, Julie. this actually shows the aspects of resilience, both positive and negative. So someone that would get a report would have a profile that would use these terms related to resilience. Now, this is based on thorough research and evidence. And the positive side and the negative side, it would show three positive, or three top positive, and 3 areas for development, if you like, in that way. And through feedback and looking at those, we can actually use the positive to balance out the ones that are potentially negative. So work with the individual to develop their skills and make them become more resilient. So that's me. There we go. And I just thought I'd put a little bit of a gallery up for you there at the end and say any questions, and apologies for going over.